The Week 17 preview of the Bears Talk Underground is brought to you by MyBookie. Guys, bowl season is well underway, but it is winding down, so the time is now to get in on the action with MyBookie. Don't be that guy with no rooting interest as your relatives and friends sit around watching the game. Not this year, when there were a record 41 bowl games to bet on, including the national championship on January 7th, and this weekend, the college football playoffs begin on Saturday. So make sure you're ready for the daily action by signing up on MyBookie today. They pay fast when you win, and they offer the craziest props. Where you bet is just as important as who you're betting on, and if you want to make money during bowl season, you got to go with MyBookie. Join now, and MyBookie will offer you a 50% deposit bonus to make sure you have a nice bankroll for bowl season. Use the promo code BEARS25 when you deposit to activate the offer. That's promo code BEARS25. College football playoff starts this weekend. Big Week 17 in the NFL. Even our beloved Chicago Bears have something at stake, as do many other teams. The action is at MyBookie. That's where you got to go to get it. MyBookie, you play, you win, you get paid. This week on the Bears Talk Underground, with one last hurdle between the Bears and their first trip to the postseason since 2010, our beloved travel up north for their annual finale matchup with the Vikings. But for the first time in a long time, this game has high stakes as both teams have more on the line than just bragging rights in the division. Can the Bears finish the season sweep, or will Minnesota play their way into the wild card? Chris Gates from SB Nation's Daily Norseman joins us on the Week 17 preview episode of the Bears Talk Underground. You know, usually this episode was the bittersweet one. We're finally getting to the end of the season. It's been a merciful, month of December. We're just trying to wrap it up. It's sweet that we're finally just getting this over with. Bitter because you don't want the season to end because you love football and you love watching the Bears, except this year is the exception to the rule. Unfortunately, the exception being the postseason, where the beloved Chicago Bears are going to be headed after this game with the Vikings on Sunday. What's going on, everybody? Larry D back for the Week 17 preview episode of the Bears Talk Underground, and this very well could be the wild card round preview. A week from now, you might just be hearing the same show again between myself and Chris Gates. We even allude to it at the end of our conversation that we had. So, we're either playing the Vikings or Philly next week, or so it goes. If Philly wins, then the Vikings have to beat us in order to keep the Eagles out. It doesn't really matter what happens with the Rams and the 49ers. We either have the week off or we're playing wild card round. That's all there is to it. But Matt Nagy is hell bent on going into this game on Sunday with every intention of winning. We're not sitting anyone that isn't healthy, and we're going out there to win the football game on Sunday. Or so I keep calling him Maggie, like I'm doing the whole Benifer or Brangelina thing with his name. Matt Nagy, Coach Nagy, has been saying it all week long that he's going out there with every intention to win, to improve our division record for the season at 5-1, and just finishing in the year out 12-4 with 4 straight victories after that tough loss to the Giants that dropped us to 8-3. We're coming back to get it done against Minnesota, and cement and put his stamp on this division, and prove that he's the dominant figure in the NFC North this year. So not just enough that he's already got the division won, he wants to go out and complete the season sweep against the Vikings on Sunday. So very cool to hear him say that. He's like doing everything possible to win the game on Sunday, including possibly starting Kyle Long on Sunday. I mean, he's been practicing. He's not on the injury report, so it's an interesting situation that the Bears have going on right now. Eddie Jackson, Aaron Lynch, and who was it? DeAndre Houston Carson, that's who it is. He missed practice day because of an illness, and unfortunately 'tis the season, so not exactly a big surprise there. Akeem Hicks missed a day of practice last week with the flu or some kind of cold or something because it, like I said, 'tis the season. But Allen Robinson hasn't practiced with a rib injury. I think the rib injury happened when he made that diving catch against the 49ers, that big 43-yard catch he had, because he left the game after that, and thinking that he probably just played through it, and the Bears are being gentle with it. And, of course, like I said, Eddie Jackson with the ankle, Aaron Lynch with the elbow did not practice, and I don't think either are expected to play on Sunday. So, but aside from that, everybody who's healthy will play. And like I said, Kyle Long is not on the injury list. So if he's been activated from the injured list, then he's going to play on Sunday, or at least he's going to suit up and be ready to go. He's excited to get after it and to get playing again. And Brian Witzman has been serviceable. He's been bad at times, but he's also been very good. You don't hear his name much, which is exactly what you want out of your offensive lineman. You don't want to know, like if they didn't put numbers on them or anything like that, you really wouldn't care who they were, so long as they weren't getting called for penalties or, blowing blocks and stuff like that, getting our quarterback killed. So, everybody knows that Kyle Long is the better offensive lineman, and I think the team is I think I read a quote where Trubisky was saying that having Long back out there kind of rejuvenates the offense or adds a little something to the offense. And Kyle Long's an emotional leader kind of guy, so having him out there gives the offense a little bit more juice, and we'll see what happens if he gets a chance to play on Sunday. So I'm excited to see how it's going to happen, and talk to Chris Gates quite a bit about that as far as what to expect from this game. I'll talk more about that after the interview when we kind of do my recap, my prediction kind of thing. But very interesting to see what's going to happen on Sunday. The NFL positioned themselves in such a way that at the very least, in the very beginning, everybody has to play to win the game, because the Bears and Vikings are being played at the same time as the Rams and the 49ers, at the same time as Philly and Washington. So nobody's going to be able to come into the game already knowing what needs to happen or what doesn't need to happen or anything like that. Everybody's going to have to go in there and play to win the game, and maybe do some scoreboard watching to see how long do you play the guys. If the Rams jump out to a huge lead, do the Bears start sitting starters to get ready and protect them because we have to play wild card weekend, and so on and so forth. So Chris and I talk a bit about that. I'll talk a little bit more about it at the end of the show after the interview. So in other news and notes, Roquan Smith, I didn't see how the voting went, or at least I didn't see an announcement saying that he won the award, but he was up for Rookie of the Week after his 9-tackle, 1-sack performance against the 49ers this past Sunday. Fellow nominees, I think one was Baker Mayfield for leading them over to a victory over the Bengals over the weekend, and I forget who the other one was. But Roquan was the only defensive player I saw on that list, like 4 or 5 guys, and Roquan was the only defensive player nominated for Rookie of the Week for Week 16. The other thing is, we've been seeing power rankings each and every week this year. There was a lot of doubt about the Bears keeping them in the, early on when they were 3-1, 3-1, and especially after we lost back-to-back games to Miami and New England. There was the shine was off the apple, if you will. So we were 10 or 11, and we dropped down to 15 and things like that. And then we've been slow to climb those power rankings back up. But now that we're sitting at 11-4, a lot of people can consider us very legitimate threats in the NFC this year. I've seen the Bears as high as 2 in more than one power ranking this week. Behind, of course, the Saints, who is everybody's, I think, unanimous number 1 at this point. The Chiefs have lost 2 in a row. The Bears have beaten the Rams. I've actually only seen like one poll or one power ranking where the Rams are ranked ahead of the Bears, and I would guess this simply because they're 12-3 and we're 11-4. I don't see any other reason, because the Bears have already proven that we're good enough to beat the Rams. I don't know, but New Orleans is the consensus number one. The Bears are number two on a lot of lists. I've seen at least 3 or 4 where the Bears are number two. I think the lowest that I've seen the Bears on a power ranking list would be like 4 somewhere, and I think that one still has them behind the Chiefs at this point. But we're finally getting some love as we head into the postseason, where the talk lately is what a threat and what a danger the Bears and their defense can be in the postseason. Everyone likes to use the phrase that defense travels. Defense travels. I think we even hear Chris Gates say it at some point during the interview that granted, the Bears have not been good on the road. We just proved that again by struggling with the 4-10 49ers this past Sunday. But our defense did travel. We only gave up 9 points in that ball game against the 49ers, keeping them out of the end zone for the second year in a row. And it's like the only team that I'm actually really worried about on the road is the New Orleans Saints, because they've just been lights out. I mean, they lost their first home game of the year against the Buccaneers. They probably should have lost week 2 against the Browns. If the Browns had a decent kicker, they probably should have won that game. But aside from that, they've been pretty well dominant at home. They beat the Rams at home this year, and just seem to be able to dig out victories like the one they dug out against the Steelers this past Sunday. That's the only place I'm really worried about playing. I think if we have to go to L.A. for the divisional round and play the Rams, I'm not really worried. I'm not really worried. Like, we've been there, done that with the Rams, and I don't think that they can beat us. And I think that the win in Chicago and the way that we won, it's not like we got lucky, there was a fluke play. We simply beat the hell out of the Rams in that game. We rattled Jared Goff and everything like that. And I'm confident if we have to go on the road to L.A. for the divisional round, I fully believe that the Bears will be in the NFC Championship game if we have to play the Rams round 2. But, it's we'll see how it goes. We will see how it goes. Maybe it'll work out and the Rams will be coming to us for round 2. Who knows? Stranger things have happened. This has been a wacky year for the NFL. So, but, it has been nice seeing the Bears get some love and, showing us the proper respect here at the end of the season, that even though our records are behind a couple of teams in the NFC, we're being regarded as the biggest threat in the NFC right now. So that has definitely been fun to see. And speaking of fun things to see, obviously we just celebrated Christmas on Tuesday. Merry Christmas to you all once again. And there was a video of Khalil Mack and one of his Christmas presents. Apparently somebody left a Khalil Mack Bulls uniform under the tree for Khalil Mack, a red home uniform for the Bulls. And, number 52 said Mack on the back of it. It was a full-blown, like a legit, Bulls uniform. And there he is running around the house, making moves and taking shots and everything. And there was a tweet I saw for the Bulls, like, go ahead and sign him up. And I'm like, yeah, no, absolutely not. Don't go anywhere near the Bulls. You keep John Paxson and Gar Parson or whatever the hell that guy's name is. The guys that are ruining the Bulls right now, keep them away from Khalil Mack. It's not funny. Stay away from him. He's ours. You stay away from Khalil Mack. You've ruined everything else in the Bulls right now. You stay away from him and let Khalil continue to uplift the Chicago Bears and our chances at a postseason run. So no, he looks good in the uniform. He looks the part, taking shots and whatnot. Stay away from my guy. Stay away from Khalil Mack. So anyway, I think that's all I have for news and notes right now. Like I said, fun to see the Bears getting some love in the power rankings, as high as number 2 in most of the ones that I've seen this week. And the injury report, Eddie Jackson, Aaron Lynch, looks like they're not going to play on Sunday. DeAndre Houston Carson with the illness, probably going to play if he gets a Z-Pack like Matt Nagy keeps talking about. Get him a Z-Pack, he'll be fine, kind of thing. And we'll see what happens with Allen Robinson. Maybe they let him sit this week to nurse those ribs and come back full strength during the playoffs. So anyway, that's going to do it for the news and notes section. When we go ahead and bring on our guest, Chris Gates from SB Nation's Daily Norseman, to help us preview this high stakes Week 17 matchup between the Bears and the Vikings. The regular season finale for our beloved has them going back out onto the road in a place that has never really been kind to the Bears, but the NFL doesn't seem to care because it's the third year in a row, the fourth time in 5 years that the Bears are in Minnesota to play the Vikings to close out the season. And the technology is cooperating, so this time I actually do have Chris Gates from the Daily Norseman on SB Nation here to help us preview this all-important matchup between our two teams. Chris, basically, as far as my listeners is concerned, this is our first conversation in, we talked over the summer, but as far as the 2018 season is concerned, this is our first conversation.
It sure is, because, we tried it once before, and it went kind of poorly. So as long as everything holds up here now, everything should be good, I think.
Yeah, kind of. That's generous of you, Chris, kind of. So anyway, because we didn't get a chance to talk, I mean, it would have been, game 10 for you guys when we played, game 9 or 10 when we played back in week 11. So, I mean, we had a bunch of games to talk about then. I mean, basically, with this being week 17, this is going to be kind of like a year in review show for the Vikings and how we got up to this point. And I kind of mentioned to you before we got started here a moment ago that, I was kind of looking at the stats for the team, especially those on the offensive side. Kirk Cousins, 4,100 yards, almost 4,200 yards, 100 quarterback rating, 29 touchdowns, only 10 interceptions. Dalvin Cook and Latavius Murray, almost identical, almost 600 yards rushing apiece. Adam Thielen, Stephon Diggs. I mean, Thielen over 1,300 yards. Diggs right behind him with just under 1,000. Kyle Rudolph has got 60 catches for 615 yards. Why is this team 8-6-1?
They've had some weird circumstances in different games. I mean, there was the game at Lambeau where we probably should have lost in overtime, or should have lost in regulation, quite frankly, thanks to the penalty on Clay Matthews and Mason Crosby missing a last-second field goal. And then we probably should have won in overtime after we watched our then rookie kicker yak all over himself twice during the overtime and missed two potential game winners. The Buffalo game, I still have no explanation for the game against the Bills. Nobody knows what the hell happened that day, but whatever it was bad. The week after that, tried to get into a shootout with the Rams. That generally goes poorly when you're trying to match them for points. And later on in the season, I think a lot of it falls at the feet of the then offensive coordinator, John DeFilippo, because there was a couple of games stretched there, and it started with the game in Chicago on Monday night where this offense, I mean, you listen to guys like Bobby Wagner from Seattle after the Vikings played the Seahawks, and he was like, yeah, we knew exactly what they were going to run every time. And, that's generally not a recipe for success. And, we saw that in quite a few games in the second half of the season and ultimately led to him getting fired. But, over the last few weeks, they've kind of gotten it together, and the defense has been playing pretty well since about the midpoint of the season. And so, there's just been some weird circumstances in a couple of different games, and that's where we are right now.
Yeah, because it kind of looked like, I mean, you were at the Rams, you were home for the Saints, you lost both of those games, and then like you said, the inexplicable loss to the Bills, where it's like basically you guys built yourselves a hole you couldn't dig your way out of with the turnovers early on in that game, but then you won 3 straight. You beat Philadelphia in Philly, which at the time was an accomplishment. Philly might make the playoffs, so I mean that win's starting to look better the further you get away from it. Then you beat Arizona, you beat the Jets, then the loss on Sunday night to the Saints, and then you finish off before the bye with a big win over Detroit. Then you come to Chicago on Sunday Night Football, and basically, whether you want to put it on Filippo or if you just want to praise my Bear defense, that's just been awesome this year. I mean, the 25-20 was the final score, but it wasn't as close as the final score would tell.
No, it wasn't. I mean, and the Vikings missed some opportunities early in the game. I mean, they had the pass where Stephon Diggs was open by about 5 yards,
Right.
and Cousins just missed him. And a couple plays later, we had the fumble by Dalvin Cook, and everything just kind of went backwards from there. I mean, even with Mitch Trubisky throwing, I can't remember if it was 2 or 3 picks that game, because he was giving the ball away, and the Vikings just couldn't do anything with it because the Bears defense that night was just pretty incredible.
Yeah, Mitch threw 2 picks that day. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I couldn't remember if it was 2 or 3. I didn't think he had a third, but
he waited 2 more weeks when we played the Rams to throw 3 interceptions. Also did not matter in that game, ironically enough. But go figure. But but then after the loss to the Bears, you beat Green Bay, and then 2 tough road games at New England, at Seattle, and those were the other 2 losses that came. Then you let go of Filippo, and then all of a sudden the offense wakes up and the defense leans on the opponents. 41-17 over Miami, 27-9 over Detroit, and then here we are, Week 17. You guys are 8-6-1. You win and you're in, and you have a chance to make it to the playoffs, which will, if you beat us, will basically buy you the right to come to Soldier Field a week later to see if you can right the wrong that happened on Sunday night.
Yeah, Soldier Field in January. Great. Can't wait. Looking forward to it. It's going to be awesome. But, yeah, I mean, I think those last 2 games before the DiFilippo firing kind of summed up, what was wrong with the offense with him still running it. Because, I mean, against New England, you look at Dalvin Cook's numbers, and in the first half, he carried the ball 5 times. He was averaging like 12 yards a carry, and the Patriots didn't have an answer for him. And then you get into the second half, he carries the ball 4 times. I mean, but yeah, you're doing really awesome, so let's not give you the football anymore. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. And, I saw a stat somewhere that, I think it was from Week 7 until the time DiFilippo got fired, Kirk Cousins was either the best or one of the best play-action quarterbacks in the NFL, but from Week 7 until the time DiFilippo got fired, no team ran less play-action than the Vikings did, which, again, doesn't make sense. I mean, you're not playing to anyone's strengths if you do that, and that's been one of the differences we've seen over the last couple of weeks. I mean, granted, the defenses the Vikings have seen these past couple of weeks are not great, but, the offense is actually playing to the strengths of their players rather than trying to kind of jam the square peg into the round hole as it goes.
So you guys, and I forgive the comparison, but I mean it's one that kind of stands out. It's kind of like you guys are the NFC version of the Browns, where Hugh Jackson, Todd Haley were guys running the offense for the Browns. They get rid of them. Kitchens, I think, is the guy's name. He starts calling the plays. All of a sudden, the Browns are like 5-1, 6-1 since that guy started calling the plays. You guys get rid of Filippo, and all of a sudden, you put 40 up on Miami, 27 a week later on the Vikings, and it's like this offense that had been waiting to explode all season finally gets a chance to stretch out its legs a little bit.
And I mean, I wonder if it isn't kind of a case where DiFilippo, he came into after the Eagles won the Super Bowl last year, he had gotten interviews for head coaching positions after just being the quarterback coach for the Eagles. I think
he had one in Chicago.
I think the Bears brought him in to interview him for their head coaching position, and the Vikings waited and brought him in to be their offensive coordinator. And you'd like to think that coaches don't have a mindset like this, but I'm kind of wondering if DiFilippo wasn't maybe concentrating so much on his next job that he wasn't really doing a very good job at his current one, because he was at the top of some of the short list for head coaching candidates for next year, and apparently after getting fired from Minnesota, his name's not up there anymore. I mean, he might get some more offensive coordinator looks, or he might have to go back to being a quarterbacks coach again. But yeah, I don't know if he was maybe looking forward to, getting ready, getting his resume uh, ready to go for next off season. But yeah, the hype, he fell way short of the hype that we saw for him going
Sure.
into the off season.
Well, I mean, I've obviously been following the Vikings all year because they're really the only threat the Bears have had in the division. The Packers, they have not had a good year. The Lions, regressed this season. I mean, remember the conversations we had over the summer about how tough a division we thought we had, where we thought fourth place could finish 8-8 this year. Kind of looking at the improvements each team made, the schedule that we had in front of us, that the NFC North was going to be clawing until the very end, and instead it's the Bears who emerge as the front runner, and the Vikings the only other viable playoff team, as opposed to like how many teams can we get out of the North this year, and so on and so forth. And I just keep hearing. I mean, like I said, when I was looking at the stats, Kirk Cousins 4,200 yards, 29 touchdowns, only 10 interceptions, a 100 quarterback rating, and yet I keep hearing about how he's been disappointing this year. I mean, what is that? Is that on DeFilippo, or I mean, has Kirk Cousins not been there in the big moments? I mean, where would that kind of criticism be coming from?
I mean, I have very few complaints about Cousins, to be honest. I do think a lot of it falls on DeFilippo. Like I said, not really playing to the strengths that Cousins has. I mean, obviously Cousins shoulders some blame for this as well, because he's made a few really head-scratching throws over the course of this season, and uh, Cousins kind of is what he is. I mean, he's gonna have more good plays, I think, than terrible plays. But the terrible plays he makes are really, really terrible, and usually result in points for the other team. And I think the big part of it is on DeFilippo, and we've seen that over the past few weeks after the coordinator change. And given some of the other options the Vikings had during this offseason, I don't know what anybody else would have done differently. I mean, Case Keenum hasn't, been the quarterback he was with Minnesota last year. I mean, Sam Bradford's not even in the National Football League anymore right now. Teddy Bridgewater is a backup in New Orleans, and he's going to probably move on next year and sign somewhere else. And Cousins was the best option at the time, and I don't think that anything that's happened since then, I mean, given that the Vikings weren't really in a position to draft a top-level quarterback last April, I don't think anything that's happened since then has changed that for me.
So tell me about the running game, because I know that there was a lot of hoopla about Dalvin Cook being healthy this year. I mean, was it by design that he and Latavius Murray seem to be splitting carries, or is it the sticking with the hot guy kind of thing, or was DeFilippo just really trying to mix things up?
Unfortunately, Cook missed a bunch of games. I mean, he got hurt in the Week 2 game in Green Bay, and he missed Week 3. He came back for Week 4 and only played a half, and then he missed like 4 or 5 games in a row, and he was finally healthy. He was finally healthy the week of the Detroit game before the bye week, and finally got some carries there. And he's been healthy since then, and he's been a huge difference maker. But yeah, he's missed a bunch of games, and Murray's a capable running back. Obviously, we've seen that over the past couple seasons, but yeah, Dalvin Cook just brings a completely different dimension to this offense, I think, when everything's clicking the way it needs to.
And I see the defense is number 1 in the league, 50 sacks this year, so kind of picking up right where they left off. And how many Pro Bowlers did you get any in out of the defense this year, or did the Bears kind of take up all the spots this season?
They got 3 Pro Bowlers on the defensive side. They got Danielle Hunter in there, obviously, because he's just been terrorizing everyone this season. I mean, Harrison Smith made it again because he should. Right. And the big surprise for the Vikings, I think, was Anthony Barr making it for the 4th year in a row, which that surprised a lot of Vikings fans. I mean, early in the season, he had some pretty rough sledding, and he missed a few games with a hamstring injury. He's really managed to come on quite a lot, uh, over the past few weeks. But I would think these last few games were done after the Pro Bowl voting had concluded. So, yeah, Anthony Barr getting in was kind of a head scratcher, at least for me anyway. But yeah, we got three on the defensive side, and Adam Thielen made it on the offensive side. So the Vikings wound up with a total of four.
Sure, great. With the on the defensive side, I mean, have they been generating turnovers the way they were last year? I mean, where is it that when you get 6 losses, 38 points to the Rams, and the New Orleans put 30 points up on you. The Bears got 20. Well, we got a defensive touchdown in there, so I take that back. But the defense has been playing well, but not as well as, I mean, last year's success was going to be hard to duplicate, but where have they been coming up short as far as matching what they did a year ago?
Well, I mean, a lot of it, I think, was early on in the season. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, they went out to the Rams on a Thursday night after a short week, and they gave up 38 points, and that was one of the games that Barr really had a rough time because Sean McVay wound up getting Barr matched up on Cooper Kupp pretty consistently. And, Barr's a great athlete or anything, but he shouldn't be covering wide receivers 40 and 50 yards downfield. And
Sure.
Those are the sorts of situations he found himself in. I mean, you look at the Bills' loss. I mean, most of those points came from the Bills being set up on short fields because of turnovers, so I really can't put that on the defense too much.
Sure.
I mean, I don't think the turnovers have been coming at quite the rate that they have been over the past couple years, and particularly on the fumble side of things. I'm not sure how many fumble recoveries the Vikings defense has this year, but it seems like every time the offense that the Vikings are playing against fumbles the ball, the offense manages to get back on top of it. I mean, just the Bills game alone, I think the Bills had 3 or 4 fumbles and managed to recover all of them and that sort of thing. So, I mean, turnovers in the NFL, particularly on the fumble end of things, are just as much luck as a skill, and they just haven't been getting those sorts of bounces this year, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, when I was talking to a friend of mine, he's not a Bear fan, kind of wondering, what's the big difference between this year and last year. And I mean, aside from the obvious reasons, Nagy, and we also signed a bunch of offensive players, whereas last year Jordan Howard, Tariq Cohen, that was our offense, and everybody saw us coming a mile away. But there's 3 things that the Bears have done this year that they had an inability to do under John Fox. One, we have been uncharacteristically healthy this year. When we played the Rams on Sunday Night Football, combined between the two teams, there was one person on the injury list. One. And it was Allen Robinson, who sat out practice on Wednesday with a hip thing and was practicing on Thursday. So, I mean, there were literally 0 unhealthy players on each team going into that. 2, the Bears have been generating takeaways one after another. We lead the league in turnovers, in takeaways, I should say, this year. And then 3, we have stopped shooting ourselves in the foot or cut down drastically on it. I mean, when I think back to the Monday night game last year in Soldier Field, Mitch Trubisky's debut, there were at least 2 plays off the top of my head that I can think of that would have made a difference in that game. Jordan Howard ran for a touchdown that was called back because of a holding penalty, and like an offensive pass interference penalty or something like that. Killed us or took us out of field goal range. Like, there was a pass on that play that would have got us into field goal range. That's 10 points taken off the board. That would have made a difference in that game. That was the John Fox era in a nutshell. We shot ourselves in the foot constantly. We couldn't generate any turnovers. I mean, we have more interceptions this year than the entire John Fox era combined right now. We have 26 or 27 going into this game. We had 8 each the 3 years that John Fox was the head coach. I mean, luck does play a big factor into it, and also whatever the Bears are doing to facilitate that is working.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking it up now. According to ESPN, I'm looking at the turnover numbers. The Vikings have actually recovered 8 fumbles this year. I'm surprised it's that high. to be honest. And they've got 12 interceptions, and on the offensive side, they've thrown 10 interceptions and they've lost 10 fumbles. So they are an even zero in the plus minus as far as that. I know their plus minus number a year ago. Oh, hey, I can pull that up on ESPN here too. Let me have a look. Their plus minus numbers last year were, they were +5 last year. They only turned the ball over 14 times all season, and they did actually have fewer fumble recoveries last year. They only recovered 5 fumbles in 2017. Like I said, I'm surprised their number of fumble recoveries this year is that high. It just doesn't seem like I'm not sure how many they've forced as opposed to how many they've recovered, but yeah, I'm surprised the numbers are that high, quite frankly.
How's the offensive line been for you this year? I mean, even with the year that Case Keenum had last year, protecting him was an issue at times. And, I see that Kirk Cousins has been sacked 36 times this year. Not a gigantic number, but not necessarily one you want to see on your quarterback. I mean, you're averaging, 2.5 sacks a game when you're at that point in this time of the year. So how has the O-line been?
I mean, the offensive line is better. It's still not great. It's still, it should have been the primary focus of, the draft and free agency last offseason. It definitely needs to be the focus of the draft and free agency this offseason. We have gotten a pleasant surprise in the play of Brian O'Neill, who the Vikings drafted in the second round in this past draft. And everyone thought he was going to be a project that was going to take a year or two to develop because, he was a tight end when he first got to college at Pittsburgh. And, he's ridiculously athletic if you look at his numbers from the combine and whatnot. But, people think he didn't have NFL level strength. And he still might not at this point. But according to, I believe it was Pro Football Focus, he's played over 400 snaps this year and has yet to allow a sack. He took over as the starter at right tackle midway through the season and just hasn't let go of the job. And, he could be the left tackle of the future for this team. But, yeah, his play has been a nice surprise. Pat Elflein, I think, is finally starting to round into shape after missing the first few games of the season. He missed those games because he had ankle surgery because he broke his ankle in the NFC Championship game last year and also had a shoulder issue he was dealing with. So he didn't play the first, can't remember if it was the first 3 or 4 games he missed, but he's finally starting to get it. But outside of those two guys, I don't think there's an offensive lineman on the Vikings roster that should just assume that they have a job in Minnesota next season. I'm sure Riley Reif probably will because his contract number and his dead money would make it really prohibitive to cut him.
Sure.
And he's not been great, but he's serviceable at least. But yeah, everyone else on the offensive line, there shouldn't be any guarantees outside of those 3 guys.
So we're coming into the game on Sunday, and as I said in the open, historically Minnesota, whether it be the Metrodome or US Bank Stadium, has not been a friendly place for the Bears. We don't have a win in the new stadium yet, and the ones in the Metrodome were very few and far between. I think 2011, 2010, something like that might be the last time that we won in Minnesota. So, it's been a while since we got a victory up there. How has the home field advantage been for the Vikings this year?
It's been really solid, and yeah, I think it was 2011 the last time you guys beat us in Minnesota because that was Jared Allen trying to break the sack record. Oh. And the Bears eventually literally triple teaming him from about the midpoint of the third quarter onwards to try to keep him from getting there. But yeah, the home field advantage at US Bank Stadium I think has been pretty outstanding. I don't think the Vikings have very many losses there, although they didn't beat the Lions there until this season. The Lions were 2-0 at US Bank Stadium before the Week 9 game this year. But yeah, the home field advantage has been pretty solid. I've never actually been to the new stadium, unfortunately, which is something I need to correct here in the very near future. But I mean, I've heard people say that it gets louder than the Metrodome got, which would really be quite an accomplishment if it's true. So
Yeah.
I think the home field advantage has worked out pretty well for the new digs here so far.
Yeah, I mean, and we have a very interesting game coming up for us, and the NFL by flexing the game from its original noon start to the 3:25 Central Time start has really kind of set itself up so that nobody's tanking the game, because the Bears are going to be watching the Rams, and you guys are going to be watching the Eagles, and so on and so forth. If the Eagles lose to the if the Eagles lose, then you guys are automatically in because they can't do any, they won't be able to catch you. If the Rams get far out ahead of San Francisco, how far into the game do we play our starters, and so on and so forth. And I mean, it's just a really interesting matchup where the stakes are high, and yet we've also got a lot to protect at the same time.
Yeah, and I think that's the way the NFL is going to kind of do things going forward for Week 17. I mean, all the games that really don't have any playoff implications and really don't mean anything are in that early Sunday window. And then we put all the games that do have playoff implications or implications for seedings or whatever, meaning, in that 3:25 Central Time window. And then if there's one game above all the others that, has like the one they chose with the Colts and the Titans, and it's literally winner gets in, loser goes home.
Right.
And it doesn't get any bigger than that. So they push that one to Sunday night. I mean, they didn't have a Sunday night game last year, but I think someone said that had something to do with New Year's Eve programming on NBC or something like that, not wanting to get in the way of that sort of thing. But yeah, I think that's going to kind of be the way that Week 17 works in the NFL going forward. It can put all the games in that 3:25 window in case there are games on the West Coast, like the Rams-Niners game, that actually mean anything.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and it's just going to be a super interesting game because the first two quarters are probably going to be where the game is determined. If the Bears are out in front, or if you guys get out into a big lead, or whatever, I mean, it's pretty much going to be across the board. If the Rams and Niners are tight at halftime, or if the Rams are up 28-0 or something like that, and that will determine how the rest of the game for the Bears and the Vikings gets played. And Washington and Philadelphia are also playing at 3:00, same as us, and things like that. So I mean, I as we mentioned before, they put the win and you're in game on Sunday night between the Colts and the Titans, which makes all the sense in the world, because I think the other best candidate would be the Bears and the Vikings. But if the Rams have already beaten the 49ers, then what do the Bears have to play for? Instead of a Mitch Trubisky, Kirk Cousins battle, it's like, hey, here's Chase Daniel and whoever our backup running back is, and those guys have you seen on special teams. That Bear defense is going to be on the sidelines wearing T-shirts and shorts and stuff like that, and watching the game, and the game that we thought we were going to get, not even close.
Yeah, and the NFL does know drama, and they've set up quite possibly the greatest amount of drama they can, and that's why they're the best sports league in America, and they get the ratings and they make the money. So can't fault them for what they're doing.
Yeah, so I mean, the beginning of that game is going to be monumentally important. I mean, the first quarter might be where it's decided. You're going to have to come out like gangbusters to, for the Vikings are going to want to strike early, and the Bears are going to want to do the same, so on and so forth, because I think like the intensity might wane as the game gets further along, depending on how the games around us are going, which is why I'm very interested to see how everything is going to unfold. I mean, for me, it's like we're playing for a bye week. Otherwise, the Bears are in. So, I mean, we won the division. We're at the worst that we're going to do is the 3 seed, so we're playing on wild card weekend. If the 49ers want to be as much of a pain in the ass for the Rams as they were for us on Sunday, that would be helpful. We get a week off. We get a home game, and so on and so forth. But I really think that first quarter is the one you're going to watch, because I think that's where people are going to come out guns blazing to try to get the game over with quickly, or to put their stamp on it as to trying to put together a lead that can't be matched. And
by that token as well, I mean, you have to wonder, because if if the Vikings do make the playoffs, the most likely scenario, as we've already mentioned, is Bears Vikings again.
Correct.
Next week at Soldier Field. So, I mean, even if you're the Bears, and even if you want to win, I mean, how many tricks do you pull out? How many different things do you do, or do you just go preseason vanilla, whatever? Because if you've thrown out a bunch of stuff nobody's seen before in the first half, and then the Vikings wind up winning, and you play the next week, well, now the Vikings have all that stuff on tape that you could have used in the playoff game as sort of an element of surprise. And it's going to be interesting to see how everything plays out, because once we do a little scoreboard watching and see how some of these other games are going, I mean, I don't know if the Redskins are even going to put up a fight against the Eagles. So I'm treating this as, if the Vikings don't win, they're screwed. And if it happens, it's hard to say that they don't deserve it, but yeah, they kind of would.
Yeah, because I mean, I was listening to Sports Talk earlier today, and was talking about something that I feel is 100% true. Is like, I mean, the playoffs this year. I mean, to jump ahead just a little bit, and let's just say for an instance, we both get in. I mean, obviously the Bears are in, but let's just say whether the Bears win or lose, or you guys win or lose, let's say the Philadelphia Eagles lose, that pushes you in no matter what. Let's just play with that scenario. We're both in, and this has to be one of the more wide open playoffs on both sides of the league that I can remember in a long time. I mean, the Saints, record-wise are the best team in the league, but they got beaten by the Cowboys, who are also in the playoffs. The Bears made a mockery of the Rams on Sunday Night Football and beat them. We beat the Seahawks, but it was a tough game. Same thing with Minnesota on Sunday Night Football before. There's kind of been this carousel of the teams that are going to be in it, that they're all beating each other. Same thing on the AFC side with San Diego, Kansas City. New England doesn't look as sharp as they do. They're not blazing their way through December like they usually are. They may not even get a bye week this year. The Texans had 8-9 wins in a row at one point and are going to be in there. Whether it's the Colts or the Titans, you don't want to see either one of those teams in the playoffs. It really could be a complete, I have no idea who's going to make the Super Bowl this year. Whereas in most years, it's like, yeah, it's probably going to be this team and that team, and if it doesn't, then that will be a surprise. This year, the betting lines could be all over the board on who's going to be playing in Atlanta this year.
Yeah, I mean, in the NFC, New Orleans is probably your prohibitive favorite, just because they are the number one seed, and they're a completely different team inside the Superdome than they are when they go on the road.
Right.
But like you said, the Pittsburgh, the Steelers gave them a solid game in New Orleans. They lost to Tampa Bay in New Orleans, so right. There just really aren't. We've seen the Rams stumble quite a few times. The Bears have had their issues.
Sure.
At times gone from Soldier Field. Dallas, I don't know if anybody knows what to expect from Dallas, quite frankly. And it's just going to be, like you said, there's no one team that you can look at and say, yeah, this team is definitely going to the Super Bowl on either side.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes it so exciting is that, unfortunately, my Bears haven't made the playoffs much in recent years, but even in the years where they have made it, no one's really been talking about the Bears as a legitimate threat. Well, this year, they can't be excluded from the conversation as they normally would be, even as, in 2010 when they made it, I was like, yeah, the Bears, but, are they better than Atlanta, who was the 1 seed that year? The Packers always gave them trouble. If they play, can they beat Aaron Rodgers, blah, blah, blah. No one really took the Bears seriously about getting there. And this year, that's completely different. If the Vikings get in, especially by beating the Bears, then they've got some momentum, even though they have to come to Soldier Field. It's a wide-open race no matter what this year, and I think that's why I'm really looking forward to the postseason and how it's going to unfold. Obviously for the Bears, but even more specifically on the AFC side, because I would really love to see somebody other than New England make it to the Super Bowl this year.
It would be nice, yeah, but I mean, if they do manage to get their bye week again, I mean, nobody's going to want to go to Foxborough, and I mean the Chiefs went up to Foxborough and New England beat them, and
Right.
then New England loses to Pittsburgh, who might not even make it, and yeah, it's been a crazy year. I mean, this is the sort of thing that the NFL strives for with the parity and not having any real dynasties to speak of. I mean, the Patriots are sort of a dynasty, I guess, but even they are not. I mean, it seems like they're in it every year, but
Yeah.
they're not actually in it every year. But yeah, this is the sort of thing that the NFL wants, and they're getting it this year.
Yeah, I mean the Patriots just seem a bit more vulnerable this year than in past seasons, and I think that's what makes the race in the AFC so interesting this year. So let's bring it back to our game. Like I said, I'm honestly expecting all the fireworks to be early on, so that the Vikings can try to put something together to get a lead, and we'll all be scoreboard watching and everything. But let's pretend this is going to be a regular 60-minute game that's going to matter all the way throughout. How do the Vikings beat the Bears on Sunday?
I think that the key, and Bears fans aren't going to want to hear me say it, but it's probably true that they have to do kind of the same thing they did in the first game and make Mitchell Trubisky go out there and beat them. They can't let Jordan Howard hammer them. They can't let Tariq Cohen run all over the place. They need to get their focus on stopping the run and make Trubisky carry the load for that Chicago offense, because I didn't see a lot of the Niners game. I did see a couple of iffy throws from him. The one that kind of went backwards to Tariq Cohen that wound up as a fumble and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we know that Jordan Howard and Tariq Cohen are great in the running game, but if you put the Bears offense behind the chains, particularly if Allen Robinson's health is a little on the iffy side. I haven't seen any updates on him yet. But, yeah, the Vikings need to make Trubisky beat them. Like we said, he threw 2 interceptions in the first game. The Vikings really didn't take advantage of those. But, yeah, if the Vikings turn this into a game where Mitch Trubisky has to beat that defense, particularly the way the defense has played the last few weeks, I think Minnesota can come out of this one with a victory.
All right, and I think that's accurate. I mean, I was just when I was over at my dad's for the holidays this weekend, looking at the Bears and this season and Trubisky and how he's played. It's like, no, he hasn't been. He's been great at times. He's been awful at times. But the one positive thing you can say about him this year is that he hasn't lost us any games. In the 4 games that we have lost. The Green Bay game, week 1, that wasn't Trubisky's fault. The Dolphins game, that was on the defense. The Patriots game, special teams gave up 2 touchdowns that week. And then finally the game against the Giants, Trubisky was nursing that shoulder injury. He didn't even play. So he may not be the reason that we've won 11 games, but he's not the reason that we lost those 4. So, he's kind of been keeping his head down as far as being the reason that the Bears didn't win or lose, but he's also the one reason that people would say the Bears can't win the Super Bowl this year is because you can't trust which Trubisky is going to show up, at least not this year. Will it be the guy that lit up the Buccaneers for 6 touchdowns and nearly 400 yards, or will it be the guy that threw for 110 yards and 3 picks against the LA Rams? Now, granted, the Bears won both of those games, but you can't throw for 110 yards and 3 interceptions in a playoff game and expect to win.
No. And, yeah, that's going to be the story for the Bears, because we know that defense is going to travel and that defense is going to continue to put the clamps on people. But if Trubisky can't step up to the moment, and it's going to be the same way for the Vikings with Cousins, who's kind of getting the reputation of not being able to get it done in the big games. I mean, we know both these teams play defense, and they're capable of doing great things. But just like we talk about defense in this league, but pretty much every team is, how far can your quarterback take you? And we're going to see that this weekend, I think.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to it, Chris. Thanks so much for coming back on. I have a feeling we're going to be doing this again about a week from now. So let's try and save some of that conversation for next week, all right?
I certainly hope we're doing this next week. I hope you're not. I hope you're not talking to someone from Philadelphia or Seattle or anything like that.
Yeah.
I would love for me to be back here next week.
All right. Well, let's count on that then. Getting Chris Gates from the Daily Norseman back on next week to preview the wild card game. Good luck on Sunday. I hope everybody comes out healthy so we got an even matchup for next weekend.
All right. Well, thanks for having me, Larry. I appreciate it like I always do.
Thanks once again to Chris Gates for coming on to the show. And if things go his way, he'll be back on the show next week to help us preview the wild card round between the Bears and the Vikings. And, as we talked about quite a bit there in the conversation was what's going to be so interesting about this game is how it's played. And we might see all the fireworks as far as, the teams trying to win the game early. Kind of like, me going back to my boxing references again, trying to get a knockout in the early rounds kind of thing, trying to get it over with in the very beginning. Maybe we'll see some bigger plays. Maybe the Bears will try to throw the football down the field to try to get on the scoreboard early or something. Maybe we'll take some more chances with blitzes. I don't know. I don't know how we're going to approach this game because, like I said at the top of the show, and that we mentioned during the conversation with Chris, is that the NFL positioned itself so that basically everybody's going to have to play the game to win. That's what the NFL wants. They were very strategic in what they did on Sunday. They have all the games that have any kind of implications are the late games. Philly and Washington. Philly's got to win in order to get in and get some help from the Bears on that one. The Bears are playing at the same time as the Rams, so we can't really go off on what they've already done and so on and so forth. We're going to have to go out and just play the game like it's the only game being played on Sunday, and I'm interested to see how that's going to be when the scoreboard watching starts to come into effect. If the Rams start get out to a big lead and pull away, because their first matchup earlier this season, the Rams won 39-10, so they blew out the 49ers the first opportunity they had against them. If it's a repeat performance, then how deep into the game do the Bears go before they start sitting starters? How committed will they be to winning the game and keeping the Vikings out, or whatever the objective is? If we're going out there to win because you play to win the game, as Herm Edwards said so famously all those years ago, then how deep do we go into it? Do we start sitting starters if we get to a big lead that we feel like we can hang on to, so on and so forth. So it's really going to be interesting. So it's like trying to talk strategy and what needs to be done. You kind of do that based on playing a full 60-minute game. But are we going to play a full 60-minute game on Sunday? Are we going to have to? Are the Rams going to come out and take care of business with the 49ers so it's not necessary for us to play the full 60 minutes because our fate has been decided no matter what? So whether we hang on to this lead that we have, or if we're behind the Vikings at the time or whatever, do we just concede and, get ready for next Saturday or next Sunday? Or do we keep playing to try to win the game and keep the Vikings out so we can play the Eagles, or whatever the strategy is? I mean, it's really difficult to sit here and talk about what the Bears need to do on Sunday. Basically what I would do is just come out and do what we've always done. You heard me mention it to Chris during the interview, why the Bears are so vastly improved from this year to last year, or from last year to this year, I should say. Number one, we're one of the healthiest teams in the NFL, whereas the last several years we've led the league in injured reserve. We have created more turnovers this year than the last couple of years combined. So we're forcing the turnovers, giving the ball back to our offense. And third and most important, in my opinion, aside from the injuries, of course, but we're not shooting ourselves in the foot constantly like we were time and time again when Fox most recently when Fox was the coach. I mean, you guys remember that game that I bitched about for a whole year with the 49ers. We made 6 mistakes in that game. If we make one fewer mistake in the game, we win it in regulation. We never have to go to overtime. You heard the examples I gave Chris. the first game against the Vikings last year, Mitch Trubisky's debut. We had a long pass to Trey McBride that would have gotten us at the very least into field goal range, was called back for like a lineman downfield or whatever the hell it was. We had a Jordan Howard touchdown run called back because of a holding penalty. That's at least 10 points that came off the board that would have played a huge factor in the game, could very well have won the game for the Bears in that. And then so many other examples, throughout the year, just in 2017 alone, where the Bears hurt themselves instead of helping with their constant mistakes and miscues and shooting themselves in the foot and so on and so forth. The Bears have cut down dramatically in that. And then the fourth thing that I didn't mention was how resilient we've been when we have made mistakes. That the 49er game being chief among them, that lateral fumble that Trubisky had when he pitched it to Cohen, and Cohen dropped the lateral and so on and so forth. We lose it. The 49ers are in good field position, and the defense holds, and it only becomes a field goal. A few weeks ago when we're playing the Rams, Mitch throws an interception. On the very next play, Kyle Long intercepts Jared Goff to give the ball right back, erases that turnover. A few weeks before that, on Sunday Night Football against the Vikings, Tariq Cohen with a critical fumble in the football game. The Bears defense shuts it down, and it becomes nothing for the Vikings. And just how resilient the team has been to either recover quickly from mistakes or do what they can to erase them. Mitch throwing 3 picks against the Rams on Sunday Night Football wasn't as big a story as the Bear defense forcing 4 picks out of Jared Goff and a safety in that one. That's the kind of team that we've been this year. Not only have we cut down dramatically on the way that we hurt ourselves, we've been resilient in those moments in recovering from those mistakes. And that's what's been so remarkable, and why Matt Nagy should be the leading candidate, if not the lone candidate, for Coach of the Year this year. It's night and day, not just in records, but in everything else. The team has done so many things that we couldn't do last year under John Fox, and it's been remarkable. And that's why, here I was, not a fan of the Nagy hiring when it happened. Didn't know much about him, but he was definitely on the bottom of the list as far as the ones that the Bears were going to interview. And it turns out, Ryan Pace was smarter than all of us, man. He's definitely proven that time and time again this year with the moves that he's made. Nagy was the guy, he is the guy, and God willing will be the guy for a long time. So, it's been amazing, the differences between 2017 and 2018, which is why just about every single Bear fan on the planet is riding high on this team and excited about getting this postseason started to see if everything that we've been seeing all year long, all the talk from the talking heads on television, ESPN, NFL Network, and so on, can it come true? Will we be able to ride the wave all the way to Atlanta? Wouldn't that be something? So, but anyway, we just need to go out there and play our game. Even if we play the one that we played against the 49ers, just be efficient, move the football, move the chains, hang on to it, score just enough points to win. That's all we need to do. That's all we need to do. We only gave up 9 points to the 49ers last week, but obviously we're facing a much better offense than the one we faced in the 49ers. Last week it was Nick Mullins and Dante Pettis, and granted, George Kittle is a Pro Bowl tight end. Now we've got Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs, and we got 2 good running backs coming out of the backfield in Murray and Dalvin Cook. And Kirk Cousins is, while he hasn't exactly proven himself to be worth $84 million guaranteed, he's a lot better than Nick Mullins. So, the Bears need to be on top of their game if and when we're trying to win the game on Sunday. So just be efficient, be smart, hang on to the ball, move the chains, score enough points to win. That's really all I got. So I'm just going to sit back and wait for Sunday at 3 o'clock to see how it all unfolds. When do we pack it in for the game and get ready for Wild Card Weekend? Will we need to? Will the 49ers do us a solid and bury the Rams and give the Bears a reason to keep playing and win the game against the Vikings on Sunday? We'll see how it all unfolds. Until then, my name is Larry D, and this has been the Bears Talk Underground.